A 7-footer just hit a step-back three over the conference finals MVP in a road Game 7, and the building went completely silent. Welcome to Hoops Pill. If you're new here, subscribe and drop a like. It means everything. Now, let's get into it. Nobody in that Oklahoma City arena believed what they were watching in real time. The San Antonio Spurs, a team most people picked to exit in the first round, walked into a building where the Thunder had never once lost a Game 7 against the reigning champions, against the reigning MVP, with a roster full of players who had never experienced anything close to this magnitude. And they didn't just survive, they took over. Head coach Mitch Johnson said it perfectly when he looked into the camera after the final buzzer. His guys don't give a single thought to the word experience. And after watching what unfolded over 48 minutes, it was impossible to argue with him. Before we get into the game itself, there's something worth addressing because it's part of why this result hit differently for a lot of people watching. Oklahoma City is a genuinely talented team, and SGA is a legitimate superstar. Nobody's taking that away. But across this series, the foul hunting, the body control manipulation, the constant falling to the floor on contested shots, it accumulated into something that started grinding people down. By Game 7, it wasn't just Spurs fans who were mentally checked out from watching it. There's a version of this series where OKC wins and the dominant storyline is exhaustion. Instead, we got something completely different. What San Antonio did in this game was the direct opposite of manufactured, and that's exactly what made it so compelling to watch. They moved the ball with purpose, pushed pace in transition, and played with a level of trust that most teams spend years trying to build. 17 made threes in a road Game 7, 14 forced turnovers converted into 19 points off mistakes. That's not a team hanging on, that's a team imposing its will on the defending champions, and doing it in a style that reminded everyone watching why they fell in love with basketball in the first place. Heading into the fourth quarter, none of that felt guaranteed. The Spurs were up 3, SGA had already dropped 31, and you could feel the crowd starting to believe again. Oklahoma City had been here before. They knew what closing out a Game 7 looked like, and they were starting to find that familiar rhythm. Then, Keldon Johnson opened the quarter with a 3. Cason Wallace answered immediately. Harper grabbed an offensive board, kicked it back out, and Keldon buried another one. 2 threes in 2 possessions from a guy who had been inconsistent all postseason, and suddenly the complexion of the game was shifting back. A few trips later, De'Aaron Fox knocked down a huge 3 from the corner to push the margin back out. And then came the moment that cleared the building. Wembanyama caught it at the elbow, stared down Jalen Williams, and pulled up for a step-back 3 with full confidence. When that ball went through the net, it wasn't just a made shot. It was a statement. 7-footers have no business doing that with that kind of fluidity at that level of the game, and everyone in that arena understood what they had just witnessed. The Spurs went on a 14-5 run in a matter of minutes and stretched the lead to 11. Then the situation that had haunted this team all series finally arrived. Wembanyama's 5th foul sent him to the bench, Oklahoma City started cutting into the lead, and every Spurs fan watching from home immediately remembered every painful non-Wemby stretch from the previous 6 games. This was the moment the Thunder had been waiting for, their best player on the floor, their home crowd re-energized, and the guy who had been suffocating their offense now sitting in street clothes watching from the sideline. Then, Luke Kornet happened. Isaiah Hartenstein got a clean look in transition after a Spurs turnover, took it all the way to the rim, and Kornet came from nowhere and pinned the shot against the backboard. In the biggest game of his professional life, he made the biggest play of his career. Julian Champagnie has a nickname now, and he absolutely earned it. Game 7 Champagnie. With just over 5 minutes left and the game still in question, he caught a step-back look with a hand in his face and drilled the 3 without hesitation. 6 made threes on the road in a conference finals Game 7. The only players in history with more in that situation are Steph Curry and Klay Thompson. That's not a list you joined by accident. Every time Oklahoma City started finding traction, Champagnie had an answer waiting, and he finished as the best plus-minus player on either team at +16. That number tells the whole story.
Dylan Harper played this game like someone who had been doing it for a decade, and he just turned 20 years old. 12 points, 7 rebounds, 3 offensive boards, clutch putbacks, and then that step-back 3 over the MVP of the league in the final minutes of a road Game 7 as a rookie. The composure alone was jarring to watch. Most players his age crumble in moments like that. Their footwork gets sloppy, their decision-making gets reactive, their body language betrays them under pressure. Harper looked like he had been practicing for that exact moment his entire life, and in a lot of ways, he probably had been. To Oklahoma City's credit, Cason Wallace refused to let the game die. He caught fire in the fourth quarter and put up 14 points almost entirely on his own will, answering bucket after bucket every time it felt like San Antonio had finally closed the door. What's genuinely puzzling, though, is what happened to SGA down the stretch. 35 points and 9 assists, efficient numbers on paper, but 4 points in the fourth quarter and not a single trip to the free throw line when the game was on the line. The version of Gilgeous-Alexander who draws contact on nearly every shot somehow disappeared in the exact moments Oklahoma City needed him most, and it was Wallace, not the MVP, carrying them in the final minutes. There was one possession late that's going to stay with people for a while. Wembanyama was on the bench with 5 fouls. The game was still close enough that one wrong decision could swing everything, and SGA attacked the paint but gave the ball away instead of finishing the play. In a moment that called for aggression, he hesitated. That's the kind of decision that gets replayed endlessly in the offseason, and honestly, it deserves the scrutiny, because the Thunder's entire offensive identity runs through his ability to get to the line and create chaos in the paint. When that stopped happening, Oklahoma City had no answer. The final 90 seconds were not clean. Steph and Castle turned the ball over 3 times and nearly handed the Thunder a lifeline they had no business receiving. But here's the thing about Castle. Yes, the turnovers happened, and yes, they were genuinely nerve-wracking to watch in real time. He's 21 years old in a conference finals Game 7 on the road, and he's still one of the reasons San Antonio won this series. His versatility, his defensive instincts, his ability to guard multiple positions and impact the game without needing to dominate possessions. That skill set doesn't fully develop overnight, and what he showed across 7 games was a preview of something much bigger that's still coming. Now let's talk about what Wembanyama actually did in this game, because the traditional box score almost undersells it. 22 points, 3 made threes, 42 minutes played, 5 fouls survived, but the number that actually matters most isn't in the box score at all. Before this series, SGA was averaging nearly 31 points on 55% shooting. Against the Spurs, those numbers fell to under 26 points on 41%. That is an enormous statistical drop for one of the most efficient scorers in the entire league. And it didn't happen because his teammates suddenly got better at defense. It happened because Wembanyama changed the geometry of everything OKC tried to do offensively before the play even developed. This is the conversation that needs to happen more honestly. Defense is half the game. It has always been half the game. And right now, there is not a single player in basketball who affects the defensive end of the floor the way Wembanyama does. Not through blocks alone, but through hesitation, through deterrence, through the psychological weight of knowing that one careless drive into the paint ends with your shot being rejected in a way that gets replayed on every highlight for the next week. SGA felt that weight for 7 games. The entire Thunder roster felt it. And while Wemby was doing all of that on one end, he was still scoring 22, hitting step-back threes over the conference's best player, and playing 42 minutes with foul trouble threatening to derail everything. That combination of impact on both ends simultaneously, right now, today, puts him at the top of the conversation. The Spurs are going to the NBA Finals. They're going to Madison Square Garden to face the Knicks, and for the first time in a long time, the league's biggest stage is about to feature 2 teams that people actually want to watch play basketball. A 22-year-old Wembanyama, a 21-year-old Castle, a 20-year-old Harper, eliminating the defending champions before most analysts thought they were even close to ready. That series breakdown is coming very soon because it's going to be must-watch television from tip-off. But before any of that, sit with what just happened here. San Antonio walked into the loudest building in the league in the hardest possible situation, and they earned every single second of what comes next.